Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hump Day again. Here we are. It's hard to believe it's November. Where did this year go? At times, this year's felt like it's just trudging along like a snail on a slick surface. But here we are, and I'm kind of shocked at how far it's come. And of course, it's obvious fall has fallen. It's cold as can be at times compared to what we've had throughout the year. So I hope you're having a great week. I hope that things are going well with you. We're going to share our prayer concerns in just a little while and some announcements along the way. But we're going to go back and continue into our discussion about the Ten Commandments. And in particular, today's commandment, which is the seventh commandment. And it's pretty straightforward, like the last one was, where the law tells us, simply put in verse 15 of Exodus 20, you shall not steal. You shall not steal. The first time the effects of breaking that commandment had a hold on me was when we were on the farm. 1974, my parents bought a farm, which was actually a distant cousin's farm, 110 acres, rolling hills, just beyond the Boyle County border in Garrett County, but we still went to school in Boyle County. In that farm, it's not like it was real secluded. It sat literally on a busy road, state road that connected a little hamlet of Lancaster over to Danville, and it was, obviously to be seen by everybody. But we had a problem when we first went there. We moved there in 1974, and in the first 7 or 8 years, we were hit. We were broken into. Our house was broken into 3 different times. First time was within a year or so after having been there, and obviously they knew our habits because they knew maybe we were coming home soon or what have you, because between a group that was working on something at the farm left and us arriving was a small window of less than an hour, and they didn't take anything. They broke much of anything. They broke a window to get in access through the door, and then they turned around and stole the coin collection off the wall that was hanging there, and a power saw. That was it. Hit and run. A few years later, they hit during the day. All of us were in school. Mom was working. Dad was working. And they had come in. I don't remember then which way they'd come in, but they had taken a lot of different stuff. They'd spent more time in the house, if you will. The third time was somewhere around my senior year in high school, and it was they broke in and did the same thing. It was like they took what they didn't take the last time, although I don't think they were probably the same people. And my dad was furious. My dad always hated a thief. That was something he just beat into me. Not beat, but he browbeated me all the time with that thought. And he also constantly, it's just something he could abhor. And he was upset. He was angry this third time, more so than the others, I think. I think he was tired of it. And I heard him. Now Dad didn't cuss, but he was ticked off. And he went outside working on something just to get his mind away from things. And as a teenager, I did what teenagers can do. I developed a moment of sanctimony. Dad, doesn't the Bible tell us we should forgive people? Doesn't the Bible tell us this and that? And well, yeah, son, it does. But I'm just really upset. I said, yeah, but isn't that when we're supposed? Yeah, yes. And you know how us kids can, jab at our fathers or anybody about our elders about something when we're, yeah. Well, I understood that, so I was giving him that. Well, the everything's fine. But then I went back into my room where I knew some things had been taken. I had a clock radio. The old, talk about the 1970s. It was a ball. It sat on the stand by the bed. It was a ball. It got AM radio and everything. And I listened to UK games with it, and I did a lot of this and that. And there was some cash that I had there that they had stolen, a few odds and ends. But then I saw it. They had taken a bracelet. Yes, in the 70s, guys wore bracelets all the time. It was a cool thing. We did a lot of stupid stuff in the 70s. So, nonetheless, the result was this bracelet had been given to me by the love of my 16-year-old heart, and it was gone. And suddenly I'm the one that's railing and yelling, "Those dirty so-and-sos!" And Dad was quick to smile at me and say, "Remember, son, you need to forgive." Well, it's like that with us. We don't really care much about the commandment of thou shalt not steal, to some extent anyway, when it's not us being hit. When it doesn't affect me, don't care. When it's not personal, yeah, that's a bad thing to do. But, this commandment is about someone else, we tell ourselves. When we think of thou shalt not steal, we think of some nefarious group lurking in the shadows, or we resign it, its application to people like Jesse James or Bonnie and Clyde or John Dillinger. But stealing takes on many various forms in life. The store manager who charges one thing and tells his superiors he charged something else to the salesman who falsifies his sales reports. That's stealing. The time when we tell each other, well, it was just laying there and I needed it, and so I took it, that's stealing. We also, even as pastors, are not in avoidance of that. The great pulpiteer Harry Emerson Fosdick once spoke of the time he visited a church in Maine. He noticed as soon as the preacher began to preach that the sermon was very familiar because it was his own. It was one of his published sermons. And so, exiting, he came up to the pastor afterwards and complimented him on a fine sermon. Well, when the minister didn't give any credit to Fosdick at all, he said, "Well, allow me to introduce myself. I am Harry Emerson Fosdick." And you could imagine the face on the pastor. That's why I do my best to try to say I'm inspired to write this from John Killinger, Frederick Buechner, whoever, because, they deserve the accolade for their thought. But it's stealing if you just believe it and take it for your own, as if you created it. But Mike, that really isn't stealing, is it? I mean, honestly, that's borrowing. Well, I prefer the word appropriating. It's a good government word. But stealing is really the act of inappropriately taking what is not yours and making it and claiming it as your own. Or perhaps maybe even ruining it for whom it rightly belongs. We steal in a lot of other ways too. We can steal character along the way. Pretending to be who we are not. We steal people's reputations sometimes by the words we use, the tone of our conversation concerning them. I've experienced that a lot in the last year and a half or so. People who can assassinate your character and deliberately misrepresent your actions because that's the way you see it and that's the way it has to be, without having the conversation or the wherewithal to go and find what is the truth, what was happening. Sometimes it's usually done out of the presence of that person. We assassinate behind people's backs. I think that's stealing. That's stealing. We also steal hope from others. When we turn our backs and move away from them and taking the gospel message with us, that is stealing. You're taking away the one thing that might change their life, or your participation in changing their life. But the truth is, we never steal anything without paying for it in the end. Oh, maybe no policeman ever knocks at your door and no one ever finds out. We still pay. We pay in terms of how we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem, our character or innocence that is lost. Trust is no more inwardly toward ourselves or outwardly towards others because we have taken. One of the classic works of literature was Dostoevsky's book entitled Crime and Punishment. In his novel, the main character is a Russian by the name of Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov kills a very mean and tyrannical pawnbroker. No one cares, he figures, that he killed the man. He steals the life of an evil man and takes the money from the evil man's coffers with the intention, he tells himself, of doing good for himself and for others. But even with such high motives, Raskolnikov cannot escape himself. Later, he confesses to his crime to authorities because he is unable to bear what his activity and what this sin of stealing has done to his life. We may think we get away with it, but we really don't. Dean Madison Surratt of Vanderbilt many years ago taught freshmen math. He used to begin each test with these words. He would say, "Today I am giving you 2 exams. One of them is in trigonometry, the other is in honesty. I hope you pass both of them, but if you are to fail one, let it be trig. There are many good men in the world today who can't pass a trig exam. But there are no good men who can't pass a test of honesty." I'm reminded of a great Old Testament story about what happens when you steal. It's one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament, and you've heard me tell it before. Micah, in the book of Judges, chapters 6, 17, and 18. Micah was a man who discovered what it was like to build your life on stealing. You see, his mother had a sum of money, a pretty hefty sum of gold. One day, Micah wanted it for himself, so he just took it. When his mother found out that the money was stolen, she assumed it was a thief who broke in, and so she swears this large curse on whoever took it. It was, as Buechner described once, it was as if it was one of those swears and one of those spells that would grow hair on a doorknob. It was just horrific. Hearing this, Micah got scared. What if God paid him like his mom wanted God to? So he confessed to his mother, "I took the money and I'm sorry." Well, she didn't know quite what to do with that. So hoping to invoke, or revoke, I should say, the spell she had cast, or the curse that she had sworn, she told Micah he can have it, kind of a retroactive blessing to take the money. But Micah didn't want to just take it for himself. He thought, well, I want to do something holy with it. So Micah decides to build a thing like an idol. And the result is that he took the money he'd originally stolen from his mother and built this idol, kind of put it up on the mantelpiece for all to see, anybody who stopped by to see. In fact, there was enough money left over that he was able to hire a priest to take care of his idol. Now, as you're sitting here thinking about our commandments, boy, he's broken a lot of them, particularly the early ones, 1, 2, 3, exactly. But one day when Micah was out, he felt good about himself, but a group of people from the tribe of Dan, one of the Israelite tribes, call them Danites. Well, those hombres showed up because they'd heard about this golden idol And so they came and they wanted it for themselves, and they stole the idol from Micah's house and his mother's house. Even took the priest with them. And as they made their way out, word got back to Micah that these Danites had taken his idol and his priest. So Micah went after him as hard as he could, as fast as he could. The man who stole the money, who now made an idol, who now finds his idol stolen, goes after the thieves who had stolen his idol. Yeah, you're kind of getting the humor, I hope, of this story. And when he saw how many Danites there were and how tough they looked, well, Micah decided, keep it. It's okay. And the Danites returned to their home with a stolen idol and a stolen priest, and Micah went home with nothing. Nothing that he started out with in stealing from his mother, nothing that he started out with in making an idol, not even the priest to take care of the idol. He lost everything. Why? Because Micah's life had been built on stolen gods. Not real ones. Not the real God. Gods built on stealing never last. And quite frankly, we find out from Micah, push comes to shove, when we steal our gods, they aren't worth fighting for. Now, thinking about things today, how many of you have been victims of theft? I'm sure many of you. It seems, though, that we're not only victims of theft sometimes from people breaking in and stealing stuff or taking stuff. We become victims of theft, through identity, through the bank. I think it was this past year, if I remember correctly, suddenly some charges appeared on my debit card that I was like, what in the world is this? These were charges in Georgia. I'd not been to Georgia. So I went to my bank and I showed them the transactions. I even showed them the transactions I agreed I'd done, which we'd just been to Kentucky, and now we were back home, and I traced my path. And I actually had been in Kentucky one day conducting a transaction at a gas pump. At the same time, on the same day, in St. John's, Georgia, within an hour or two of that transaction, there was a gas pump or a convenience station in St. John's, Georgia, that had my card buying something at a convenience store. And then in another convenience place, and another store. All within a couple of days. I said, I'm good, but I can't drive that fast. And of course, the bank was very gracious. They were like, well, it's obvious we got a problem. So they flagged those items, and they returned the funds until they did their investigation. And of course, they investigated and realized that someone had taken my numbers, and so reissued me a new card right away and stopped the old one right away. But people steal, and they think they're hurting nobody. Or no one, excuse me. It's kind of widespread. Most of you say, well, I remember when I slept with my doors unlocked. What has society become without this commandment against not stealing? Well, we've become a people of security systems, locks and bolts. Also, a people that, quite frankly, are shocked if we don't have something stolen at some point. I read across a story that Killinger talked about of a man and his wife, he tells, staying in New York. Anxious to start his day, the man left his wife behind in the hotel room to get ready while he went out for breakfast. Walking down the street with a pretty good-sized crowd, a man bumped into him. Not long after he took 3 or 4 steps, he reached over and realized in his breast pocket of his jacket the wallet that he has there is gone. He's been robbed. One of those famous New York pickpockets has taken my wallet. He remembered the man. He looked behind him, and he saw he was heading down a flight of stairs towards the subway. So he chased after him through the crowd. Now, being a large man and seeing that guy wasn't really that big, he had no fear. He went into a great rage over this little pipsqueak of a thief, and he catches him in the subway station. He slams him against the wall, and he just begins to rifle the man's pockets. He finds his wallet, and he puts it away, and he thinks about the time that it would have cost for a trial anyway, so there. I took what you stole. And he kind of pushes the thief against the wall and walks away. Well, he's so frustrated and so angry, he can't eat. So he goes back to the hotel and he tells his wife, I didn't eat. She says, I know you didn't eat. You left your wallet over here on the counter. Looking up the identification in the wallet, the story goes, he called the man, found him, apologized to him over his mistake. And the New Yorker said, man, that's all right. I've been mugged a lot of times in this city. I wasn't going to offer any resistance. I mean, what a sad truth that sometimes we have come to a place where we're not taken aback by thievery. We expect it. God gave the Hebrews this commandment to prevent this from happening. But there are deeper implications involved, as usual, in these commandments that God gives. God's idea was to instill in everyone that all property really belonged to God. God was sharing all things with everyone. God envisioned that there would be enough for everyone, giving enough resources for all to never want for that which was necessary in life. In fact, beyond the Ten Commandments, as the Hebrews set up their laws to live by, given to them by God, Leviticus points out that one of the great laws that God gave was what was referred to as the year of Jubilee. Every 50 years, God's law said that everything started all over again. The year of Jubilee. Everybody who had been indentured or enslaved were free. Everybody who had lost family lands through mismanagement or any reason from generations before got them back. In fact, it was to be the way in which it was to start everything all over again. So when people ever tell me, we need to enact laws that are biblical, I agree. I'd love to have the year of Jubilee back. Now, there's no evidence that the Israelites ever followed the year of Jubilee. But it doesn't mean that God didn't want it to be that way. Thou shalt not steal. The call of Christ is kind of the same way. We're called as Christians to deal with others honestly, without a need to steal for anything, to understand God will provide. For stealing violates not just the relationship with others, but also our relationship with God. It breaks the bonds of respecting God as a keeper of His word, that He'll provide the tools and the resources to meet our needs. When we steal, we're saying, I don't believe what you're telling me, God. I have to cheat to make it. I have to steal. I have to take. And God is saying, yes, but think of what you lose in your integrity. You'll miss the character you just stole from yourself. Grace is the only redeemer of our faith, even for thieves. Jesus showed how much in Luke's account of the crucifixion of Jesus, when on that particular account of Jesus' death, He is nailed on a cross between two thieves, and there is a conversation that takes place. You remember the one thief saying, look, you saved other people, why don't you save us, or save yourself, and while you're at it, save us. And then the other thief was saying, look, don't you fear God? This guy hasn't done anything wrong. We're paying for what we've done. This was our crime and the payment for it. And remember me when you come in your kingdom, Jesus. Of course, Jesus looks at him and says, in this day you'll be with me in paradise. Old Dick Burris in my last church at Pamunkey, that was his favorite text. Because he once told me, if Jesus can take the time as he's dying to give hope to a dying thief on the cross beside him, and forgiveness and grace, then there's hope for me. Two women, we'll call them Betty and Jane. They worked together at an ad agency. Calls would come from potential clients, and the potential clients would come into the agency, and switchboard would then routinely post the people's information in different employees' box, always the same amount to everybody. One day, as Betty was passing by Jane's office, she noticed a slip in Jane's box, and Jane wasn't in. Betty could use the commission, so she looked around and she took it out of her box. Contacted the woman, got the sale. Instead of Jane, Betty got the money. It was easy. She kind of started doing that every now and then. Not all the time to be suspicious, but every now and then. She was getting more than a few thousand in commissions extra every month. Nobody was the wiser, she thought. They all looked at her as a great salesperson. One day, Jane stepped into Betty's office and asked her, "Could you take this new account? It would mean a lot of money, but I just don't have time to handle it." Why? Betty thought. Jane said, "Well, I've got to go to a church meeting, and I really can't give this person the time they need today. You go ahead and take it." So Betty did. Betty took the account, but she began to feel bad after having literally taken all those other accounts. Jane came in with a similar account request some 2 weeks later, and again said, I've got something to do. Can you take this one for me? After a couple more of those moments over the course of a month or two, the thief Betty couldn't take it. She walked into Jane's office. She said, "What gives? I've been so busy." Jane said, I thought you could take some of my load. You know, don't you? You know what I've been doing, that I took some of your calls. Well, her friend said, "Yes, but I figured you needed them. So I've been giving you some of my clients because I figured there had to be some reason you needed the extra money." Silent for a moment, Betty began to cry in front of Jane, and she said, "I never thought of it as wrong until now." I don't know the rest of the story. Killinger doesn't finish it, and I don't know that anybody does. It may just be apocryphal for all we know, but I like to think Betty's life was changed by Jane's act of grace and mercy. What I do know is that the only hope any of us have is the grace of Christ. Grace enough, even for thieves, even on a cross. Thou shalt not steal. Looking at things, I want to tell you I appreciated all the support and help we got for our All Saints Day service last week. I am grateful, and I pray for all the families that were involved. This Sunday is the emphasis for our Operation Christmas Child. If you haven't picked up a shoebox but would like to, we've got them here. Pick them up during the office hours or pick them up on Sunday when you're here. If you would like to give and do a shoebox but don't want to get out, don't want to have to go into the crowds or go to the stores and find stuff and put it together, I understand. You can go online to SamaritansPurse.org and you can click on the link that allows you to use your debit credit card for $25 for them to put a box together and to ship it immediately, and to even allow you to track your box to find out when it's sent and to where and to whom. So, that is going on there. Be in prayer for that ministry. We will once again be one of the regional collection sites in the area. I think this is our 16th year, something to that effect, 16th or 17th. I'll have to ask Penny Denny. And I'm praying for a wonderful trial. We've got two, as usual, two great people who've been doing it for a few years. Kathy Carter, Rhonda Purvis are doing a magnificent job with that. We'll be gathering our own shoe boxes of people who've made them here and want to bring them on the Sunday, which is the 14th of November, and bring them to the church, and we'll be the collection site that following week. Sunday, November 21st, 5:30 in the afternoon, we're having a church-wide Thanksgiving social. I'd love for you to come join us for a chance to just sit back, eat together, fellowship together, maybe even talk together about what we are thankful for, and give thanks to God together for God's good gifts. 5:30, November 21st, bringing a dish with you. We're going to see about providing the ham and the turkey for everybody. So put that on your calendar. Join us for that. Also, some prayer concerns. First of all, Kevin Bryant, Donnie's son, who passed away Saturday. The funeral is Thursday at McKee Funeral Home at 11 o'clock. Remember Donnie Bryant in your prayers, please, and the family. Marlene Meadows doing some better in the hospital still, naturally. Knows a lot of questions, answering a lot. Some she doesn't, because, when you're in there a long time, knowing what day of the week it is, I have that trouble, and I'm not even in the hospital. But continue to pray for Marlene and for the girls, if you would. Charles Lewis is doing really well. He's been released to go out and about, and so he showed up in the office the other day with his granddaughter and with Ida tagging along. Horace Martin doing better from his shingles, but Tommy Martin, though the shingles are doing better, still has some paralysis in his face from them. Brenda Davidson had to go to UVA to be looked at by a specialist over on some place that had been on her eye forever, and the specialist believes it's a small tumor, and she will go back in 3 months, and if it has grown, then they will do surgery and probably treat with radioactive dots, they're called. Could be a possibility of major issues with sight, but please remember her in prayers as she's beginning that journey. Continue to remember Matt Fouts as he receives cancer treatments, the tests for so many people, and doctor visits for some. Linda Wheeler, who's going through some memory issues right now and maybe is probably looking at transferring to a care facility. And Lewis Harris, who informed me this last weekend and during the week, he has now joined the Kidney Stone Club at 75. He had his first kidney stone Saturday. He's had no problem since, so I told him just be blessed with that. If it went back in your kidney, great. If you passed it and didn't know it, wonderful. Just as long as you're not in pain. So there are a lot of different prayer concerns. Maybe you have some as well. Continue to remember our reshape process. We are fleshing out a lot of different thoughts along this way, and so we are looking forward to trying to assemble and assess all of these things together. I invite you now to pray with me, if you would. Gracious and heavenly God, creator of all things and giver of all good gifts, we lift up before you so many of these people that we have known and some we're learning about who are going through so many issues and problems with their health. Guide them, hold them, direct them, heal them, touch them, and love them by the power of your Spirit and in the name of your Son, in whom we pray. Amen. May you have a wonderfully blessed rest of our week, and pray to see you in worship this Sunday.